Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Good. And welcome to today's event, which happens to be one of my favorite events of the year. Reflections about the Franciscan tradition is one of the many events we are offering during Francis and Clare Week. And I encourage you to continue to attend the various upcoming events next week, as they have all been so wonderfully prepared for you. It's nice to see familiar faces and new faces in the audience today. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Yadira Moran Ulrich, because Eric wanted me to say that. To those of you that are new to the campus and to this event, welcome. I would like to tell you that this is not just a presentation. You've been invited today to be a part of our family, a part of our Franciscan home. I hope that after today, you are able to walk away with a better understanding as to why this small college is so special to so many of us, including myself. St. Francis College, a place where I came and completed my undergraduate work, and which I now have the pleasure of serving as the Assistant Director of Human Resources, is very dear to me. As I reflect on my experiences as a student and now an employee, the idea of being kind and accepting to one another, of making each other feel like we all matter in this very complicated and fast-paced world we live in, realizing that each and every one of us here in this room today offers a unique contribution, a gift to this institution and to each other. These are all parts of the Franciscan spirit that I experienced both as a student and which I continue to experience as an employee. So this year I've been given the pleasure of opening today's program, which I hope you all enjoy because the speakers are amazing. We have Dr. Jennifer Lancaster, Associate Professor and Chair of the Psychology Department, who will be presenting on the topic of bringing Assisi to Brooklyn. We will hear about two personal reflections on two individuals who recently came back from the Assisi pilgrimage. They're Julie Pape, Associate Director of Prospect Research, Office of Development, and Briana Munoz, Communication Arts major at St. Francis. All this is followed by Dr. Alexandria Egler, who will be speaking to you about the Assisi pilgrimage and the requirements of the trip. Unfortunately, the president couldn't join us today because of some scheduling conflict. He'll be missed. Definitely. So without further ado, let me open the program up by introducing Father Brian Jordan, Director of Campus Ministry, who will be opening with a special prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Yadira. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we thank you for these reflections of the living Franciscan tradition. Give us inner peace and strength, not only today, but all for next week. Look upon the importance of St. Francis and Clare in our lives. Especially remember our Jewish sisters and brothers who begin Rosh Hashanah on October 3rd and continue forth in the holy days towards October 12th of Yom Kippur. Bless our Muslim sisters and brothers who recently completed their own holy days, understanding since September 11th to recent days. Bless all of us here at St. Francis College. Bless us here, our speakers here today. Understand the importance of Francis and Clare in our lives. Not just something of a historical monument from over 800 years ago, but what applies to contemporary tradition here at St. Francis College. Bless our speakers, bless our college, bless our wonderful President Bregan Dugan, and we thank you to our Creator. Amen. Let's go, St. Francis.
As a psychologist and professor of psychology here at St. Francis. One of the core values of my profession, and something we as a department hold as central to our teaching, is a deep respect for the individual, to value life and human dignity. As a psychologist, my calling is to help others. Doing so affords me the opportunity to live a comfortable life, for which I'm always grateful. When it comes to our students, I try to encourage them to embrace the same reality, which sometimes involves telling them that they will probably not be millionaires. And to strive toward our own individual calling, while always remembering that as an educated person, as a psychology major, as a student here at St. Francis, there's always room to grow, to learn more about Franciscan values, to live a life that is dedicated to social justice and human dignity. And in the year of mercy especially, we are called by our Franciscan heritage and values to seek and to find those who need our help. I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about my pilgrimage to Assisi and to share a few short stories about how I feel Assisi is alive and well here in Brooklyn. So this is my first shot, my first pilgrimage of my life, my first trip to Italy, my longest plane ride, a whole bunch of other firsts for me. And the first thing I realized on my arrival to Assisi was everything Franciscan is uphill. The place we stayed was up a hill, the bus had to go up a big hill, and nothing speaks to a hill so much as the trek to San Damiano, which was the home of the poor Clares in the beginning, and also where St. Francis got his call from God to rebuild the church. I wasn't prepared. I was not as fit as I probably should have been, and it was really hard. But it reminds me, every time I think about it, that it always is hard. Sometimes things are challenging. Sometimes students don't do what we'd like them to do. Sometimes our colleagues don't do what we expect them to do. But if we persist, then we can climb those hills. And to do that and to persist is at the heart of what it means to be Franciscan. Thank you. This is the towel, as I'm sure most of you know. Many of you probably wear one. I wear one. This is the one I bought in Italy in 2008. The best piece of jewelry I've ever purchased was purchased in Italy. And you see them around the school a lot, and I think that they are a constant reminder of St. Francis and of the values that we are trying to uphold all the time. This picture was actually taken in the home, the old home of St. Francis, as a symbol that he had lived there. Thank you. So this is the city on the hill, and the next photo is of our little city here in Brooklyn. I grabbed some pictures off the internet, so I'm sorry, Rich Relkin and everybody else. I did give due credit, though, I think. If you look at Assisi from the bottom of the hill, it just seems like this tiny little place. And those of you, I know some of you in this room have been there, you know that it's, area-wise, it's probably not much bigger than the footprint of the college. And to be there feels like home. Even if you've never been there before, to me anyway, as soon as you get there, you sort of feel like this is where you're meant to be. And again, even though we trudge sometimes in the snow and bad weather and things like that, when you walk into the school, particularly now with some of the changes that have happened with a lot of more decorations and things like that, you know where you are, and you know that you're home, and I think that's really important as well. Thank you. This is a picture of the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi, where the pilgrims from here and everywhere go, and where the members of the Assisi community worship, and we worship together in Brooklyn as well. No matter what that means. You don't have to be Catholic, you don't have to be religious. It's whatever it means to you to worship. Whether that means to give thanks or show gratitude or building community. And that's one of the great things about Assisi in Italy and Assisi in Brooklyn, is a welcoming, non-judgmental open community. It makes this place different than any other place. Certainly in Brooklyn, and more far-reaching than that, I would say. This is a picture of the parents of Francesca Bernardone, St. Francis's original name. There's a statue of them. I'm not really sure where, I forgot, in Assisi somewhere. And even though he was kind of a rebel and denounced his birthright in a very dramatic way, his parents can sort of be seen as the cornerstone of giving him the ability, the self-confidence to be able to do that, to be able to take that step, to say, you know what, I don't want your wealth and my birthright, I'm going to do this other thing. And in psychology, we always look to the parents. Sometimes we blame them, but sometimes we want to give them credit for being able to nurture all of us and our students. And so at St. Francis, we have mentors as well. I was lucky enough to go on the pilgrimage with Dr. Mack and Mrs. Mack, and it was quite a blessing. I remember that Dr. Mack always used to say, I'm sure some of you will remember as well, that we're all called to sainthood. And I remember thinking the first time I heard him say that, this guy's got to be crazy. How can he possibly think that any of us, certainly myself, trying to achieve sainthood? And after my pilgrimage, and the more I look around here, and the more I interact with my colleagues and my students, and my clients and colleagues in my practice, the more I realize that it's not the achievement of sainthood, it's the journey. It's the striving to achieve sainthood. So even though most of us will probably never get there, I know I'm not likely to get there, we can show our Franciscan values, we can show our mercy by the way that we treat others, our colleagues, our friends, our students, and that's what Dr. Mack would want, and that's what St. Francis wants. Okay, Papa Giovanni, a man who risked his life and livelihood to save others. I won't go into the whole story here, but this building bears his name. It is the place where the pilgrims stay in Assisi, you know, I feel like we're kind of called to be the Papa Giovanni to our students in a way, to tackle issues with them sometimes that maybe no one else in their life is able to tackle with them. We give them information as faculty members, as administration. We help them in their journey as students, but we also look after them. We look after them if they're not physically present or mentally present. We check in, right? We say, you know, what's going on? And if that means we have to take a hard line and say, listen, you're not doing the right thing, you need to do the right thing. It's not that being nice is not always Franciscan, but being truthful and being honest. And I think we're called to do that here. And then you see the result. We get to share in the sorrows and the joys of our students as well. We get to help them on their journey. We get to celebrate when teams win championships. We get to celebrate at graduation. We get to celebrate as a group and individually when our students are accepted to graduate school or have other individual successes. Kind of great. Thank you. On the left, I just had to stick these two things in there. Is the Portiuncula, which is not in Assisi, but down the hill is one of my favorite places. You're not supposed to take pictures in there, and I didn't take this picture. Somebody else did. It wasn't me, I promise. But St. Francis thought that instead of the church being open every, whatever it is, 25 years, so that people could walk through and receive forgiveness, he thought you should be able to do it all the time. And so in this structure where him and his Marital brothers used to go to pray, they designated this as a place where anytime you walk through that door, clean slate, right? Clean slate. And I kind of feel, again, the same way, or I try anyway, the way we treat others around us here at St. Francis. Some of us have a long history with each other. This is my 16th year here at St. Francis. And every year I feel like we start anew. We start fresh. We forgive, we forget, we try, I guess, to forget. what has happened in the past and move forward happily and with enthusiasm. It's kind of like what St. Francis wanted for his followers in the Porziuncola there. On the right actually is something that hangs in the chapel downstairs. I'm not sure if Father Brian even knows where it came from. It was something that I made, and if you know me, you know I have about zero creativity whatsoever. So I'm pretty proud of this little creative thing that I made. But when I came back, I wanted to give something. I wanted something from my trip to be on this campus. And so I asked Brother Thomas at the time what he thought, what do you think if I did this? And I gave it to him, and he decided to put it up in the chapel. And sometimes I go in there all by myself, sometimes before class, sometimes after work, and I just take a quick look, just kind of see it, remind myself the gift that I was given by being allowed to go, and the fact that I'm, in my mind, required then to take that gift and push it forward and give forward. Okay? The last picture is a picture of St. Francis holding up the church. That's, I forgot the name.
St. John Lateran.
St. John Lateran, thank you, right outside of near the Vatican. And it's just kind of an interesting thing to me. From all the stories I was told on the pilgrimage and my reading, St. Francis was kind of a rebel and kind of a thorn in the side of the church for a lot of reasons. But yet he's honored here because I think that, religion aside, the values that St. Francis propagated are the ones that hold us up. They're the ones that hold us up, whether we're talking about religion or whether we're talking about education or we're talking about the world. Those are the things that hold us up. Being merciful to one another, being kind to one another. Okay? And then I think it's just, yeah, our seal there. So research in psychology shows us that smiling is better for you than frowning, that intrinsic motivation works better than extrinsic, that positive reinforcement changes behavior better than penalties, and that being kind is better for your health than anger or sadness or jealousy. St. Francis has taught me to fight for others, to demand social justice, to fight for the oppressed, to help those in need, and to be the best that I can be at whatever I choose to do. Pope Francis has a prayer for this year for the Jubilee of Mercy, and part of that prayer goes like this: so that the Jubilee of Mercy may be a year of grace, so that with renewed enthusiasm we may bring good news to the poor, proclaim liberty to captives and the oppressed, and to restore sight to the blind. We live in challenging times for lots of reasons, and that is not an easy task. But each day I ask that I could be a light, that I could proclaim the truth, be a friend to those in need, free people from their feelings of oppression, if only for a few moments, and in my teaching and my practice help others to see what I see. A world that could be so much better if we all showed a little more mercy and lived our lives as models of what we wish to see in the world. Thank you for listening. Pax bonum, be kind to one another.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Pape. I've been working in the college's development office for just over 4 years. Before I talk about Assisi, I want to express how grateful I am to President Dugan and the Pilgrimage Decision Committee for inviting me to go last October. When Alexandria asked me to give my reflection on Assisi, immediately 2 things came to mind. The first being, I can't believe I have to follow Ed Stewart. For those that were present last year for Ed's beautifully written and spoken reflection, you'll understand my anxiety. The second thing I thought was, what in the world am I going to say? You see, Assisi is a personal journey, one that cannot be similar or the same as someone else's. Ask another pilgrim about their experience and guarantee the places, descriptions, and sites that were visited all the same, but everyone's journey all different. The best way for me to explain Assisi and encourage others to apply is to share the 2 main reflections I gathered from the trip, and then I'd like to share one of my favorite memories. It was my first time traveling basically on my own, not really knowing anyone in unfamiliar territory. I was the youngest person there by far, Most of my pilgrimage buddies had kids around my age. Being in Assisi gave me the opportunity to make connections, friendships, and learn from others that I most likely would never have had the opportunity to travel with otherwise. I quickly realized when I was pushed outside my comfort and found friendships can be formed with anyone, anywhere, and our experiences are what truly bring people together. By the time the 10 days had passed, we were a big family, quite literally celebrating Christmas in October together. The time we had for reflection also allowed me to understand and see how relationships are the building blocks of life, and the most important relationship of all being the one you have with yourself. The second reflection I want to share is prior to going to Assisi, I did not really associate myself or find a connection with faith. I had an understanding of the key Franciscan values and way of life, but I can honestly say that through learning and living the life of Francis and Clare, and by gaining a larger and more connected understanding of what it is to be Franciscan, truly helped me realize the importance of having a greater sense of faith in my life. I also want to say that there must be a higher power out there, because I lost my phone while we were there, and Father Andre is literally a saint because he found it for me. Finally, I want to wrap up by sharing one of my favorite memories of the trip. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about Assisi is the picture of the Porziuncola in the elevator lobby. It's on the wall directly across from the chapel doors, and I bet half the people in the college have never even noticed it. I was guilty of the same thing right up until the day I returned from Italy. Next time you're in the elevator lobby, take a second to notice it. That tiny church is where the Franciscan movement began. Seeing this photo is a time warp for me, bringing me back to the morning I stood outside the doors of the basilica. It was a rainy and gloomy morning, and while we waited to go inside, I decided to walk around to the front and take a peek. I noticed that the doors to the church were wide open. At that exact moment, the sun began to break through the clouds, and what I saw was like nothing I had ever seen before. In the middle of this incredibly large basilica was a tiny, tiny church. It was literally a church within a church. The sun beamed in and illuminated the Porziuncola through the open doors, and I swear by everything inside me, it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. You won't find a picture of this in the slideshow behind me because I was in such an enamored state. By the time I realized what an incredible photo it would be, the doors were being shut. I didn't realize you're not allowed to take photos either. To me, the opportunity to touch the structure of the original church, to be in that piece of history and celebrate it by having Mass in that little wood church that St. Francis built with his own hands and began his following, was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm not sure if anyone else noticed it or if it felt as important to any of the other pilgrims, but that's the beauty of the pilgrimage. Everyone's journey is different. To me, Assisi was 10 days of my life that are frozen in time, just like that tiny church that feels frozen in time. While the majority of moments in Assisi were filled with happiness, exploration, and friendship building, the journey also allowed me to feel moments of sadness, reflection, and even a day of complete silence. Assisi will always have a piece of my heart, and for that and more I am forever grateful. It's okay to not have a reason or purpose to go. All you need is an open heart and mind, and you'll find your reason. I promise you that. I'll end by saying that, in all honesty, Assisi is hard to explain. It's hard to describe your experience to those who haven't been, and so that's why you need to apply. You need to go to understand and to create your own journey. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Briana Munoz, and I am a senior here at St. Francis College. In December of 2015, I had the honor and privilege to attend the student pilgrimage to Rome and Assisi that this institution, along with others, offers. On this pilgrimage, I did not only learn about the Franciscan tradition, but also a different way of life. What do I mean by another way of life? We are all so used to the hustle and bustle of New York City in keeping up with the times that we have so little time to reflect on what matters and on who we are and want to be. On this journey to Rome and Assisi, the pilgrims got to embrace the everyday life of St. Francis and St. Clare. Their everyday life was based off of simplicity, modesty, poverty, and the Lord. Visiting historical sites such as St. Francis's home, which was tiny and did not have much inside, San Damiano, a church in the first monastery of the Order of St. Clare, being able to meet some of the poor Clares, followers of St. Clare, and having Mass with them, are just some of the places that started to make me think differently. Also, activities such as sharing with the other pilgrims what our grace moments were throughout the day, grace moments being what really touched us, what was insightful and reassuring, made the experience feel like I was speaking amongst family. These visits and activities were a key part to how this pilgrimage taught me another way of life. It allowed me to broaden my horizons and see beyond what I already know. I became more connected with myself spiritually and emotionally. I have to say that one of the many great parts of this pilgrimage was being able to be in the presence of the Holy Father, Pope Francis. Being in St. Peter's Square with such an overwhelmingly large audience, all there to see the Holy Father, was such an enriching moment in my life. Seeing him was not only emotional, but fulfilling. I always wondered how I would feel if I ever saw him, and I finally got to, nonetheless, in Rome. Besides all the visits, activities, and reflection, another great part of this pilgrimage was the relationships that myself and all the other pilgrims formed with each other. It was an instant connection for a lot of us. We all knew why we were there on this pilgrimage, and we embraced every moment together. Being open and honest with each other throughout the reflections, sharing great meals in a family-style setting every day, being together to learn about St. Francis and St. Clare, and learning how to carry out the Franciscan tradition made this pilgrimage something I will never forget. Coming back home after the 10 days spent in Rome and Assisi, I knew I had a mission to teach others the Franciscan tradition, whether it is family, friends, or complete strangers. Thanks to this pilgrimage, I will always have a strong connection with my faith and myself. I now have the strength to carry out the Franciscan tradition. I would also like to take the time to thank Dr. Alexandria Egler for being a part of making this a wonderful, spiritual, and educational experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer, Julie, and Briana. Those were great reflections, very different and very moving. And I know there are some of you in the audience who have gone, and if those of you who have not yet had the chance to go ever want to talk to any of the other pilgrims, I'm sure you will get as equally enriching and insightful and different perspectives on their particular pilgrimage to Rome and Assisi. So now that you have a sense of what this experience is like, thanks to our three speakers, I think we get a glimpse sort of into the window of the extraordinary lives of Clare and Francis and the values that they tried to live out every day. As Jennifer noted, like Francis and Clare, we're all works in progress. We're all trying to discover and create meaning in the journeys of our lives through our work and through our relationships. And I hope as well that some of the activities during this coming week will give us some insight as to the Franciscan charism that we're trying to uphold here in Brooklyn. It's a little elusive. It's hard to name precisely, but I think we're all kind of getting the feeling of what that is. One of the things that I always try to emphasize in the classes that I teach is that all of us, whether we realize it or not, we want to know where we came from. We want to know what we're doing, where we're going. And I think Clare and Francis in many ways are inspirations for all of us in terms of trying to recognize the answers to those questions in our own lives and what it means to live out our vocations here at the college as part of the Franciscan family. And I mention this because this is really a place where Franciscan values resonate throughout the campus. I think most of us have discovered that without having to actually be told. But this is how we work, this is how we live, this is how we disagree. with each other on a daily basis. Hopefully we resolve those disagreements too, but I think you're kind of getting a sense of that if you didn't already know it. I'm here really to talk about an opportunity that we've been afforded annually that really adds to our understanding and our perspective of what it means to be part of a Franciscan tradition. You heard from Julie and Jennifer and Briana about their experiences, and there are many others in the room and on other parts of the campus that have had very powerful and inspirational moments in their pilgrimages. And I would encourage you to talk to them as well. Every year we send 3 members of our faculty, staff, and administrative community. We also send at least 3 students. This year, because of some nice fundraising, we're going to be able to send 5 students, actually, which is terrific. But this year we have Rob Oliva, Michelle Montecalvo, and Denya Phoenix, who are going to leave, I think, is it on the 9th, Rob? 8th or the 9th? Oh, he's not. It's the 9th, thanks. Okay. They're leaving on the 9th this year for that annual leadership pilgrimage to Assisi and Rome. So it's a 10-day trip, and we always send our members in our early October. The costs associated with the trip are covered by the college with the exception of your own personal spending money. So your flights, hotel, ground transportation, most meals and tips are all paid for. Your souvenirs and approximately 5 meals are your own responsibility. You don't have to use any vacation or sick time for the 10-day duration of the trip. If you want to extend your travel, those days that extend the travel are your own. Obviously, it occurs during the fall semester, so those of us who, well, all of us are necessary and important. But I know it can be a concern for those who are teaching classes or who this might be a very busy time of the year particularly. All the vice presidents and department chairs are aware of it, and they're aware that it's an important part of our mission, and everybody works together to do what they can do to make sure that you can participate. I mean, you have to make sure your classes are covered, obviously, and things like that, but with the help and support of your air departments, it should be fine. This is so important because it is very much part of our mission, and everyone tries to do everything that they can because it adds value not just to you as an individual, but to the department that you work in, and obviously for our students and the college in general. So it's a wonderful experience, as you've heard, and I want to urge everyone, those of you who haven't gone already, to seriously consider applying regardless of your religious affiliation. And I think Jennifer very kindly pointed that out. You don't have to be Catholic to go on this pilgrimage. And people, it's helped our work no matter what we do. You travel, you spend time with members of other Franciscan colleges and universities under the guidance of a wonderfully capable pilgrimage staff. This unique experience affords you time for reflection, prayer, spiritual growth, enjoying the food, the culture, and the history as well, while learning about Francis and Clare. How do you go? How do you sign up? All full-time employees from the administration, faculty, and staff who have been working at the college for a minimum of 1 year at the time of the pilgrimage. So it would be, those of you who just started, it would be 1 year from this October to next October. So if you just started, it would be you could apply next year. They're eligible, and then we choose the pilgrims in the spring to participate. Basically, the eligibility requires a written essay, including reasons why you'd like to make the pilgrimage, how you think it might impact your life, what you hope to gain, what you hope you might bring back from the pilgrimage, and how it might enhance your work or teaching here at the college. Again, I can't emphasize enough, I would encourage you to apply regardless of your religious affiliation, or if you have none whatsoever. You don't have to be an American citizen, but you have to hold a valid passport and obtain all the necessary visa material for travel to Italy. And I usually send out an email in February, March, inviting all eligible employees to submit an essay, and then the committee meets and makes a decision. So that's basically it, but I feel like I'm almost preaching to the choir because I'm looking around and most of you have been through this talk a million times already. So, so apply already. Okay. Thank you.
So now I want to thank everyone for coming today, and I hope you all enjoyed all the wonderful speeches.